Welcome to GydeBites. I am Prasanna, and today we are asking a question that every business leader should care about. Is your onboarding creating enough momentum, or is it just a motion that you are going through? In many organizations, onboarding is still a task list. You allocate an equipment, you provide a login, you show onboarding slides, orientation slides, and so on. But we all know those early days are golden window to build culture, build connection, build confidence among the early joiners. So what it would look like to treat onboarding as a growth lever and not just a checklist. Joining me today is Nick Congelosi, Director of Learning and Development at Ripple. Nick brings over 15 years of experience as a leadership coach as well as learning strategist. He has worked with companies like Apple, HubSpot, and he's passionate about designing impactful learning programs, creating inclusive, high-performing team cultures. Nick, welcome to GydeBites.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much. You could take some time out and be on the show for today. We'll jump right in. So Nick, how can onboarding boost retention in its first 90 days when someone joins you?
I love this question because those first 90 days are so critical. New hires tend to want a few things as they're joining a company. One is they want clarity of expectations. What's expected of them as they move into their role? How do they contribute to the company's mission and ways of working? And then lastly, connection to their team, to their peers, to other coworkers, and really to the company culture. That can set people up for success. If they know the rules of engagement and they know how to contribute and how to put their best foot forward, it reduces that sense of hesitation to like jump right in and get involved and put out the things that you are really good at and why you got hired for this company in the first place. So there's 3 C's that I recommend companies focus on: clarity, competence, and connection. Clarity of expectations, what's expected of you. And then competence, just in the understanding of how the company works. What's the company's mission and vision? Being able to rephrase or state that back is so important. And lastly, connection, that 3rd C, to their team, their peers, their coworkers, their new manager, and feeling connected and really embedded. And that's a pretty high level answer. So really bringing it down to some tactical things. Onboarding can often be thought of as a team whose responsibility it is to, like you said, offer some welcome slides and make sure people have their logins and technology. But really onboarding, if you zoom out, it's actually 3 key teams that are involved. First is recruiting. So that first 90 days is critical. If recruiting is setting the right expectations for what that first 90 days looks like, if the roadmap matches the experience, that's going to boost retention. The second group is the actual onboarding team. If they've designed and delivered a program that is engaging, exciting, energetic, but also helpful and informative, that's going to help boost retention. And then the third player in it is the hiring manager. Having a really clear 90-day guide with progressive goals, resources, people to connect to, that's going to boost motivation. That's going to boost retention. So all those things come together to help a new hire bridge the gap between how they see themselves contributing to the organization and what contributions actually move them forward in their, what I call their ramp period, that first 90 days ramping up into their role. So, that's kind of where we start and focus on. And again, zooming out to really think about onboarding as the experience of a new hire ramping up into a successful position, more so than that maybe 3, 4, 5 days of sitting in a classroom and receiving information.
Yeah, makes sense. I think you summarized it pretty well to start with. Like, it's all about culture, it's all about competency, it's all about connections. So, to sort of achieve this, lot of personalization and lot of technology might play a big role in today's world. So, how do you go about personalizing these things for onboarding at scale, right? And we live in an environment where the roles are diverse, the workforce is distributed, hybrid, and so on. So how do you personalize this onboarding at scale?
It's a really good question. I think a lot of companies are struggling. I don't want to say struggling. A lot of companies are figuring this out.
Yeah.
A lot of companies also, they go global, but they have a relatively smaller population. So they have pockets of people, and that can build in disconnection. So there's a couple things that need to be taken into consideration. The first is, what are the consistent elements that need to be in place for everyone? Company values, culture, mission, vision, those things transcend time zones, transcend culture, for the most part. I mean, I'm oversimplifying on that one. But the program does need to be tailored for the individual, their role, their location, their culture. And then oftentimes many geographies contribute something unique to the overall company mission. There may be one region that is more focused on sales and business development. There might be another region that's more focused on engineering. There might be another that's really focused on new markets and building out TAM. So understanding what the regions contribute to the overall success allows us to drill down from what needs to be consistent to what needs to be tailored. Your question about technology is really interesting. I think multimodal learning is really important to be able to uphold this idea of consistency but localization. So things like self-paced courses, which are slowly, I'm going to be bold on this one. I think self-paced courses are on their way out. Thank goodness. I don't think anybody likes sitting in front of a self-paced course for 45 minutes. But it does give the advantage of consistency. You know that everyone's getting the same information in the same way with the same knowledge checks. It does provide that consistency. But then drilling down a little bit, thinking about how can technology help someone understand the key skills that are needed for their role. And I think AI, and I know we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but I think AI can be a huge piece to this. And then I think the last part is really figuring out, where do people come in? So I'll give you an example. Some successful onboarding courses that I've seen that I really admire, that are global, effective, fast, because the onboarding programs don't need to be 2 weeks long. They can be 4 days. Is they include multimodal. So there's some self-paced courses. There's some peer-led modules where someone in region connects with the person in region to contextualize. There's facilitator led. So you have maybe a global onboarding manager who delivers some sessions for everyone. And then the last one is this idea of local champions, which someone on my team has built up, and I'm just such a fan of. At the end of the day, a person who's not part of onboarding, and maybe not even part of that person's department, just sits down to meet with them, that new hire, for like 20 minutes. Hey, what did you learn today? I'm so excited to meet you. What are you excited about tomorrow? And this is such an efficient way to reinforce the learning for the new hire, because we know that paraphrasing and summarizing is such an important part of retaining learning. Mm-hmm. So they summarize, they build connection with somebody else in their local region. And then the last piece is that they get to build out it tailors the experience a bit. Because again, that local person can say, well, here's how that kind of translates into our day to day. And I think that lost in translation from what you learn in onboarding to what's the reality of your day to day. If you have someone in the middle who can help you make that translation, it's going to be much more successful. So there's some technology things that I think really do play a part, but I think there's also a human element that plays a part in that too, of bridging that gap between global, diverse, tailored, and how do you still have consistency for company values, culture, mission, and those sorts of things. It's an interesting one. It's an interesting problem to try to solve.
Of course. And I think we are just scratching the surface at the moment for actually enabling real, diverse, personalized experience or onboarding experience for the joiners. So Nick, actually, you sort of touch based on how local champions or how local managers can support the onboarding and how they can translate from global to day to day. My next question was related to that in a way. So at the end of the day, how do you integrate this learning in the flow of work? Because that's what it matters, right? Because you have to do that when they are working, when they are doing stuff, and still pushing the learning ahead in a way. So how do you do that?
Such a good question. And I think given that workflows are changing so rapidly, especially with new and emerging technologies, it's hard to give like a clear answer to this. or rather to give a tactical answer, but it comes down to having, in my opinion, a clear matrix of competencies and skills for each role at each level. What is the outcome for that role and level? That's number one. If you're not designing an integrated learning program to a clear objective set of skills, competencies, outcomes, results, it's very difficult to crack that code. So that, I think, is number one, is what is the outcome here? What does proficiency look like? And then you can start to back up from there. If you can identify the tool and competency that needs to be developed at that certain time, you can make it a lot easier to integrate into the flow of work. The problem is that a lot of companies try to teach all things all at once and then expect people to retain it. And it's just not how people learn. I think back to formal education, and you take all of your classes, and then over the years in your professional world, you start to have to relearn some of those things. And I do think there is muscle memory to the brain in that sense of, like, if you get an overview at the beginning, it's easier to relearn that stuff as you go through. But I do think splitting learning objectives into, I'm going to say, task and skill, things that are explicit task-based and then skill-based, can also be helpful for timing how you integrate learning into that flow of work. So for example, I spent a lot of time at HubSpot, excellent product, great company, love their culture. If you're trying to build a HubSpot workflow, that's a task. A tool like WalkMe or Guide, or a tool that can just bring you through the tactical, like, here's how you execute on this, would be fantastic. But learning to build a valuable workflow that does lead generation and adds value to your user experience, well, that's a different objective. And that's more of a skill that might take practice. And HubSpot has their HubSpot Academy, which is wonderful and is going to teach you all of those things. But if a company can successfully think about designing their learning program into task and skill, then I can provide, what's the word I'm looking for? Interventions within that flow of work to say, here's how you do it. Yep. But then also, here's the skill and knowledge that you need to keep going. So I think there's lots of tools that are out there that can help with that. But I think, again, it comes back to, do you have a really clear objective for what success looks like for this role? And then, since we're talking about onboarding, I'd be remiss to not mention, what does success look like in progression for that role? Engineer is going to have some coding language experience, but they might need to develop new coding language experiences. They might need to translate, previous experience to the current objective. And so how do you make those things progressive to build that person up successfully?
Yeah. It makes sense. When you said that, remember the school days when we used to sort of learn everything, and towards the half year or towards the end of the year there is an exam, it gave me nightmares.
Yeah, me too. I went to school for music, so it was learn this piece of music and then perform it in front of 6 people who are going to ruthlessly judge you on the spot. So it wasn't even test taking. I kind of wish it was. But yeah, but you bring up a good point. It's the fear of failing too, I think, is a huge part to this. And I know it's not something we're going to dig into necessarily here, but integrating into the flow of work, increasing the likelihood of success for that individual by giving them a resource, a tool, a guide in the moment to make them more successful. That's going to boost their motivation. They're going to feel like the company really has their best interest at heart. The company wants them to be successful. And that's going to build loyalty, motivation, retention, and ultimately higher levels of performance. Our motivation is broken down into competence, confidence, and autonomy. If we can build competence and I can do the task or the meet the objective, and then confidence, if I can do it independently now of help, and I can take that support help away, and now I can still perform that task to an expected level of outcome. Then I start to do it autonomously. I identify the situations where that skill, task, behavior is a value add. That trio is motivation. That's where people really thrive. So I think integrating into the flow of work, adding technology supports, and just considering how people learn and grow and build a bench of skills should inform. Sorry, I know I'm going a little off topic. Should inform how you integrate learning into that flow of work.
Yeah. So, and the trio you talked about, what happens if we put AI on everything around? So, my conversations these days cannot complete without bringing in this topic.
I
So,
agree.
so how do we use AI and the trio that you talked about without sort of losing the human touch?
Yeah, it's such a good question. So AI can build, I think, competence faster, but it can overproduce confidence. If you get that information in an instant with context that's there, it may make you overconfident where now you're assuming one success equals all success. And I think that can be dangerous, right? Like Michael Jordan, incredible athlete, one of the best of all time. The argument about LeBron James, I understand it, but Michael Jordan, one of the best athletes of all time, best basketball player of all time, not a great baseball player. Yeah. And so I think that's a lesson that we can learn in utilizing AI. Just because you become successful using AI in one place doesn't mean you're going to be successful using it in all places. So you have to be tested a little bit. Your question about not losing the human element is, I think, continuing to use humans to check the understanding of the new hire. So this idea of champions or meeting with your manager, coaching really becomes key. So let's say, for example, I'm your new hire and I'm using AI to understand company vision and mission and my role and context, and I'm getting a lot of great info. You asking me simple questions like, so if you continue on this, what do you think is going to be your factors for success 6 months from now? So just getting me to think critically, because we're being fed a lot of great information, but we're not necessarily applying that critical thinking lens to it in today's AI. I think that will change very rapidly. So I think adding a human into the mix is certainly key. And then the last part is, if you look at how AIs are built, you can infuse them with human element. So if you train the AI on your company culture, your values, your goals, you give experiences, you are willing to feed it emails and Confluence pages and things like that, you can also get the AI to as closely replicate some of that stuff as possible. There's a company called Pinnacle that I'm associated with, and their AI coach Pascal does an incredible job of this, of really trying to bridge that gap. But looping all the way back to your question, it's that human coach part. I think about it like a coach stepping in to show you a better form when you're playing sports. That in the moment correction is so effective, which AI can maybe help you do. But the human element, that coach, that manager, thinking of themselves as a coach is a way to bridge that. The last thing I'll say on this, and it's a little dystopian, but if AI could monitor what you were doing and predict when you're going to veer off from a successful path and then correct it for you, I mean, that would be ideal, but I think there's a massive trust issue there that we can't really say. I mean, I think about the old Microsoft days of Clippy popping in and being like, it looks like you're writing a resume. Like, if we can get to that spot with AI, but also trust it in a sense, I think that would be the ideal outcome. But I have some hesitance there on the trust factor.
Yeah, makes sense. So, Nick, I really liked how you were able to suggest that AI can build the competence, but it can also build the confidence little too much. So that sort of stuck with me, because I mean, we see that everywhere, right? You take any skill and people sort of think that they know, but it's like, I'm not sure whether they really do. And that's the situation that's going to arise every now and then. So it was a really good revelation for me that you could put together that into the words. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So my last question for today, Nick, would be, you touched a little bit on that, but what kind of trends you're seeing in onboarding that sort of will be there to stay in next few years?
Yeah, trends for the next few years.
I know it's difficult. No one knows what's going to happen tomorrow.
So I think there are some things that are stable. Focusing on human connection. I think as more companies are thinking about a return to office, there's more potential for that connection. I think remote companies who are able to prioritize connection, and then companies that are hybrid that are somehow figuring out how to make it easy for people who are remote to connect to folks who are in office and vice versa. That is the magic, in my opinion. And I think that's a trend that will continue and is durable over the next several years. How do onboarding teams and organizations continue to get people collaborative? We know the best work is done with and through people. So how do we continue that in a world where AI is demanding a lot of focused attention? Algorithms are pushing you very far into niches. How do we help people zoom out, get connected to other people, share ideas, and get there? So I think that one's a really durable one. The others that I would toss out are focus on reducing the time to learn tasks. AI is speeding that up so fast. There is no learning program. I'm saying this very boldly. I'm going to stand by it. There's no learning program that is going to accelerate someone's ability to perform a task faster than an AI could do.
Wow.
There just isn't. For tasks that are complex, I think trends like having just-in-time resources that walk you through how to execute that task, huge, going to continue to be important. And then lastly, I think a big trend for folks to focus on is how do you switch your mindset from being outcome focused versus process focused? And this ties into the AI task piece. But I think where many onboarding teams are focusing is like, well, what's the process they need to learn? And I'm going to use a really simple example. Like, what's the process to submit time off in Workday? That is a waste of time. That is a sheer waste of everyone's time. Instead, really focus on how do you make sure that you're requesting time off that's not going to negatively impact the uptime for the product or for the customer?
Yeah.
How do we shift from process focused to outcome focused? I think that's where tech, tools like Guide, WalkMe, AIs like, GPTs and Claudes and all the other ones, that stuff is going to make process easy, but that's going to mean that we need to focus more on outcome, judgment, those skills that are harder to teach. It's a lofty goal. I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying I've figured it out or anyone has. But I think that's where, if I had a crystal ball, that's probably what I would see in it.
That's honestly a good way forward for we as a product as well, because at the end of the day, if someone could say, okay, if you take a week off in the month of June, this is going to be an impact. Wow, that's not happening today for sure.
Yeah, and there's that ownership piece of if we're helping employees see the impact of those decisions, there's that sense of ownership that I think builds retention, loyalty, kind of coming back to the top of the conversation. So that's where we want to really focus is that piece. But we spend so much time teaching the process of it. I think that's going to shift. I think that's going to keep shifting.
Yeah. Wow, that was amazing, Nick, and it was like very insightful for me to have this conversation with you. But before we wrap up, we always ask our guests and leaders and speakers to leave for our listeners one actionable tip. So it could be related to onboarding, it could be related to L&D, anything that you could think of.
Sure. There's a couple. So I'm going to break the rules. It might not be one tip, but I think they're related. For the first tip is focus on your people managers. There's a lot of current research that shows that people managers are more lonely than ever. They're struggling more than ever. They're facing burnout rates that are higher because being a manager is really tough. So I would recommend for organizations to focus on how do you support those managers and make them successful. They're going to make everyone else successful. So that's tip one. Tip two is tech-based. If you're not using AI every day, you're a day behind. I fundamentally believe that. It's not going to go away, and we've got to embrace it. And then the last one is don't discount the connection piece. Human beings want to be part of a group. It's just built into our DNA. And so if we reduce the focus on connection, to increase the focus on performance and we get that ratio wrong, if it gets too out of balance, it's going to have negative impact. So figuring out how do you get that ratio right of connection and culture to performance and clarity of expectations and how those marry, I think that'll help teams be really successful. So those are my tips.
Yep. Thank you. That was awesome. So this was Nick for you, Nick Congelosi. Thank you so much for sharing such a practical insights. And to everyone listening, onboarding isn't just about orientation. It's your first opportunity in a way to show people what it feels like to grow with the company, for yourself, and so on. If you get that right, you just don't improve your retention, you build trust. As Nick mentioned, you build clarity, you build competence, you build connections, and so on. If you find this episode useful, share it with your colleagues, share it with your onboarding teams. Follow GydeBites for more conversation with the people shaping the future of learning. I'm Prasanna. I will see you in the next episode. Thank you once again, Nick.
Thank you very much.